The image is one of steadfast composure. Prince William, the Prince of Wales, standing ramrod straight in his ceremonial uniform, the very epitome of a future king. His expression, often described as practiced neutrality or dutiful calm, is a masterpiece of royal restraint. Yet, for those who remember the flaxen-haired boy trailing behind his mother's coffin, that composure is not merely a personality trait. It is a fortress, painstakingly constructed over decades, built upon a foundation of profound, sequential loss. To understand the emotional landscape of William, and indeed the modern royal family, one must journey beyond the headlines of a single emotional loss and into the cumulative, reverberating grief that has fundamentally shaped a man destined for the throne. His story is not of one earthquake, but of a series of tectonic shifts that have reshaped the monarchy's emotional geography, leaving him to navigate a landscape where duty and personal sorrow are inextricably and often painfully entwined.
The notion of loss within the House of Windsor is rarely a private affair. It is a public spectacle, a national ritual, a subject of global scrutiny. For William, the first and most defining of these ruptures was, of course, the death of his mother, Diana, Princess of Wales, in 1997. At 15, he was not just a boy losing a parent. He was the heir losing the people's princess, the most famous woman in the world. The loss was catastrophic in its intimacy and its publicity. The sight of William, head bowed, walking behind Diana's coffin alongside his brother, father, and grandfather is seared into collective memory. It was a masterclass in enforced stoicism, a boy's private anguish displayed on a global stage. This was not merely grief, it was traumatic public bereavement. The royal protocol of stiff upper lip, the very institution's allergy to public displays of emotion, collided violently with the global outpouring of raw, uninhibited sorrow for his mother. William learned his first brutal lesson in the crown's cost. Personal mourning must be subsumed into public ceremony. This foundational loss created a silent echo chamber within William. In the years that followed, his grief was compounded by the complicated legacy Diana left behind, her warmth, her volatility, her media warfare with the palace, and her profound feeling of isolation within the institution William was born to lead. To lose her was one pain, to inherit her narrative, to be constantly measured against her ghost, to see his own wife, Catherine, face similar media scrutiny, became a secondary, enduring strain. He became the protector his mother lacked, fiercely guarding his own family's privacy with a vigilance born of that trauma. His emotional loss was thus coupled with a burden of guardianship, a determination to rewrite the royal script that had failed Diana.
The stability he later found with Catherine Middleton and the joy of their three children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, offered a sanctuary. It was a chance to build the normal family life his mother had wanted for him. Yet, even this sanctuary exists in the shadow of the crown, and loss would find its way back in with cruel timing. The death of his grandfather, Prince Philip, the Duke of Edinburgh, in 2021 was a significant blow. Philip was more than a grandfather. He was the longest-serving consort in British history, a pillar of gritty reliability, and a rare figure who could both embody the institution and mock its absurdities. For William, Philip was a link to a certain kind of resilient, pragmatic masculinity within the firm, a model of unwavering duty leavened with a mischievous spirit. His passing marked the end of an era, the silencing of a formidable, anchoring voice. William, now in his late 30s and shouldering increasing responsibility, lost a key mentor and the man who had, in many ways, schooled his grandmother in the art of survival as a sovereign. The loss was personal, but also structural. It removed a critical support beam from the monarchy's older generation, forcing William a step closer to the front line. Then, just 9 months later, came the loss that would not only shake William personally, but would redefine his entire world and his imminent future. The death of his grandmother, Queen Elizabeth II, in September 2022. To call this merely an emotional loss is to profoundly underestimate its seismic impact. Elizabeth II was not just a beloved grandmother. She was the one constant in his life, in the nation's life, for over 7 decades. She was the monarch, the head of the Commonwealth, the embodiment of the crown itself. For William, her death was a deeply intimate family grief. The loss of Granny, the owner of the sprawling estates where he found solace, the matriarch whose quiet strength had been a steady presence through all his own personal storms.
But concurrently, and with immense force, it was a constitutional and existential transition. In a single moment, his father became King Charles III, and he himself became the Prince of Wales, the direct heir to the throne. The weight of history descended onto his shoulders with tangible force. The emotional loss was instantly, irrevocably fused with the burden of destiny. There was no space to simply grieve the grandmother. He had immediately to acclimatize to the king's son, the future king. The funeral, a global event of staggering scale and precision, was an echo of his mother's, a public ritual demanding composure. But this time, he was not a boy following a coffin. He was a principal mourner and a central pillar of the monarchy's future, his every expression parsed for signs of strength, weakness, or readiness.
This compounded grief, Diana's tragic premature death, Philip's closing of a chapter, Elizabeth's passing that launched a new era, has created in William a specific and complex emotional architecture. It is defined by a fierce, almost zealous protection of his private sphere. His moments of publicly visible emotion are rare and therefore powerful. The tears shed at the Diana Memorial Concert, the strained countenance during the Queen's funeral procession, the palpable frustration and sorrow in the wake of his brother Harry's departure from royal life and the subsequent public airing of familial strife. The rift with Harry represents another layer of loss, not of death, but of estrangement. The once close brothers, united in their childhood trauma, now find their relationship fractured by differing paths, perceptions, and public accusations. For William, who values loyalty and continuity above all, this has been a painful loss of fellowship, depriving him of his closest ally and understanding the unique pressures of their birthright.
The emotional loss that shook the royal family is therefore not a single event, but a cascade. It has shaken the family by forcing a profound evolution. The monarchy William is being groomed to lead is not the same one his grandmother inherited. The trauma of Diana's death forced a slow, reluctant humanization of the institution. William and Catherine, with their focus on mental health advocacy, most notably through the Heads Together campaign, are direct products of that trauma. They openly speak of emotions, of the importance of psychological well-being, in a way that was unthinkable 2 generations ago. William's own losses have become, paradoxically, a source of his modernizing mandate. His perceived empathy, his relatability, is rooted in a grief the world witnessed. Yet the tension remains. He is a man shaped by emotional loss, championing emotional openness, while being destined for a role that demands an almost superhuman level of emotional regulation. He must balance the memory of a mother who died fleeing the press with a role that requires media coverage to sustain its relevance. He must honor the steadfast, dutiful model of his grandmother while adapting to a world that demands authenticity and vulnerability. In the quiet moments, inspecting flowers left for his grandmother, sharing a quiet word with a mourner, playing with his children in a photo call, one sees the synthesis he is trying to achieve. The grief is there, not as a disabling force, but as a formative one. It has given him a seriousness, a depth, and a palpable sense of purpose. The losses have shaken the royal family by removing its most iconic figures, yes, but they have also prepared, in a crucible of sorrow, a future king who understands the human cost of the crown perhaps more deeply than any before him. Prince William's story is a testament to the fact that the greatest weight a future monarch
Inherit is not the sovereign scepter or the imperial state crown, but the accumulated, silent grief of a life lived in the public eye. His emotional losses are the invisible jewels of his inheritance, heavy, personal, and forever shaping the way he will one day wear the visible ones. The royal family was shaken, and in the settling, a new kind of prince, tempered by sadness and steeled by duty, is emerging from the rubble of the past, ready to build a monarchy that can perhaps bear its heart without losing its head.